we did 2 meetups so far. First meetup, we asked the question, we asked many questions, but really the question that was the heart of everything and that produced the most amazing responses was, what does art do for you? Okay, what is the function of art? Because what happens is that whenever there is something as glorious as art, everybody claims whatever it is that they have is art. And that's why going back to the function is the only way of ensuring that you're talking about the same thing. Otherwise, you're just talking about names. You're not talking about the thing. So what is the thing? So that is what we discussed. Last time, we just started out discussing 2 ideas of his. One was that of imitation, and second, his observation about 3 aspects of art: medium, manner, and object. Okay, and we just started the discussion on imitation, and there was just this incredible discussion. Okay, I want to do something similar. So Maritza put on the table, these 4 different, these 6 different ways, that 6 different concepts that Aristotle uses to think about art. And she also put on the table the 4 different concepts that Ayn Rand uses to think about art: plot, characterization, theme, and style. Okay. But what I want to do is I want to first go back to his 3-part distinction between medium, manner, and object. Because in some ways, that distinction is foundational to this other distinctions. So let's just talk about that first. Okay. And again, this is going to be a dialogue. So I'll say some things. I will invite you to comment on that. Let's try to keep focused on that, but please express all your thoughts, and let's see where we can go. So let's start with medium, manner, and object. Let's do it in the order of object, medium, and manner. Object is, what are you trying to do with art? What is the final goal of this work? Okay. That is really, if you want to map it into Ayn Rand's concept, is the theme. What are you trying to say? What are you trying to do? Okay. So that is the object. That's where you're going. That's the final cause, the impact that you want to have. Okay. Now, medium actually is a very, very deep concept. And the person who explores it the best is Marshall McLuhan. He says, he's the guy who says medium is the message. Okay. And people think that, people just don't think of medium. And in the process, they get shaped by it. Their entire response is mostly because of the medium. And they don't notice it because they're just looking at what the messages are coming through it. But the way the message comes through and way it impacts you and way you take that in is all shaped by the medium. So we can look at the concept of medium. So we can look at different mediums in art. You can say, what does music do? What does literature do? What does visual art do? What does something like drama do, which uses combination of all these 3? And what is the impact of the medium? So what is the role of medium in art? So that's one question we can put in. The first question is, what is the object of art? What is the object of art? Now, if I use that, then if I ask that question, then everything that claims to be art is going to just jump in there, and it's going to confuse us completely. So I will ask to you individually, what is the greatest object of art that you can imagine? Okay. What is it that the art can do? So when you say you love a particular art, what kind of object? What is that object at its best, at its highest? So I'm taking actually Aristotle's own definition that art shows you what could be and should be instead of what is. And I'm applying it to art itself. Okay, so, and I think you should be applying it to art. You can't just say, because otherwise you're saying, look, I produce this, this is, therefore it is art. No, it's not. Okay, so I invite you to focus on the ideal of art and your ideal response to art and ideal function that the art serves in you. So in that context, I ask you, what is the highest possible object of art? So that's question number one. Okay. The question number two is on medium. Okay, and I'm going to talk very briefly about the manner. Manner is close to the concept of style. It seems like a very simple thing. It's just how you do things, but it actually reflects the way in which your mind works, the way in which you process things. So it is actually a very deep topic by itself. So let's keep the topic of style or manner aside for a moment. Let's talk about object and let's talk about medium. Now, I do not know the amount of interest that the discussion of object is going to generate and the discussion of medium is going to generate. So you are welcome now to comment on both if you want. You know what? Let's try. Let's give object a try. Let's see if there is enough discussion on object. There should be, because that's why we are discussing art in the first place. That's why there is art in the first place. That's why we consume art. That's why we produce art. So what is the object? What is the highest possible object of art? And then we will go into medium next, and then into manner. All right. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you would like to talk about your thoughts. Don't talk about theories. Talk about your experience of the greatest art and the greatest impact it has on you. In that context, what is the object of art? I hope I have made this clear enough. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Would love to hear from as many people as possible. Okay, we'll start with DLJ.
Interesting question. It's almost, and I don't mean this as a criticism, it's almost question begging. Because by asking us what impact it has on us, it's leading us to think of the emotional experience. Whereas art has got a number of different ways you can look at art. Communication could be another way of looking at it, right? So what is art? Form of communication? It's a form of record, like when you dig up architectural art that has been buried for 1,000 years. What was in the mind of the creator, or what was in the minds of the receivers when they saw it when it was first created, is not there anymore. So it's got a whole different anthropological meaning to it. So yeah, you've led us. The question has led us in a particular direction to Aristotle's benefit. I can't help thinking. So yes, his point about the emotional response to it is that, isn't it? Yes.
All right, thank you. So let's broaden. So let me ask you, when you say this particular art does the best job of communication, it satisfies the object of communication amazingly well. What kind of an object? What does it need to be for it to be that, to achieve that goal? When certain kind of art provides the greatest record of a time, you look at one piece of art and say, wow, that is the Egyptian worldview captured in this. It is the record. It is actually communicating a view to you. And you may or may not have the emotional impact, but the object, so you're absolutely right. The communication part is inherent to art. Art that does not communicate is not good art. It does not succeed in, it's not possible to produce emotional impact on people at large if the art is it being a record is a consequence of communicating a worldview of a particular time most effectively. So I see all these three things as going together. So you're welcome, if you would like to answer it in terms of, like, why is it that some art communicates to us across all these ages, across all this distance? What is it that makes that possible? So you're welcome to answer it that way.
So if you're taking the whole of all of those different aspects, I'm going to have to go with Mona's reply about authenticity. I think it's that makes us go, oh, that's the real thing.
Wonderful.
Like Coke, obviously. Oh, look, there's Coca-Cola, the real thing. Sorry.
Thank you.
I don't know why I went there.
I know. It is the fizz, you can't say anything without the fizz. It's not the water, it's the fizz, So next up is going to be Maritza.
I'm good to go ahead on my reference. To me, it's the yes, this, that feeling that, you look at something and you just, I don't know. For me, it's that thing that makes you, stop and take a look again. Or sometimes you see something and you just find yourself rooted. And sometimes it's even like an unexpected medium. Like we have some amazing murals here in Philadelphia. And every now and again, I'll just be walking, minding my own business, and you kind of see something out of the corner of your eye, and you're like, did I just see that? You have to back up. You're like, oh my goodness. Yes. Because it's depicting a thing. Like, we have murals that speak to, you know, like social injustices, or like long centuries standing, like emotional, social things that are suddenly just on a wall in art. And it's not, there are no words in this, but you see the entire, like, the one that comes to mind for me is, it was actually in, I went to a special little town in Colombia, and the art tells the story of like the runaway slaves and how they made this free nation. And it tells the story with one image, and it's so, like, you have to stop and keep looking. Like, you don't, or I didn't have a choice. Like, it was kind of like it reached out and gripped me. And I find that if I were measuring, it's that thing. It's, I'm standing in, years ago in Washington, I was standing in the artist studio and just riveted in this spot. And I was standing there so long, the artist is like, do you like it? Do you hate it? And then I looked at him and said, I'm trying to figure out how to put it in my purse. And that's a terrible response. And so not something you want to say to the artist who drew it. But I was left without words at the all of what was in front of me. And so to me, that's the measured, like, great art just reaches inside and kind of smacks something inside you. It's felt. You talk about in other of our interactions, you speak of the felt transformation. And I think that's a good way of seeing it. When one encounters a great work of art, when one walks away from that art, we're not the same person we were before we saw it.
Wow. Okay, I just want to highlight some points as people are speaking. DLJ came back to the authentic, and Maritza started by saying it's the yes. Okay, so in some ways that is all that there is to it. I mean, in order to actually make it happen, in order to produce that impact, tremendous amount of work and tremendous amount of virtuosity has to go in to the art. But the result of it is that's simply yes. And that yes is, it's like combination of something smacking you. It's like, imagine what the statue of David would have been to somebody in the Middle Ages. who had a view of human being which was very, very different. And they just walked, and it stood in the public plaza. Okay. So the impact that it would have had of, it's not just yes, it is, it is like extension of yes. Okay, of saying, I see something more about myself that I did not know. So there is a transformation. So that is that smack on the head. Great art will do that to you, because otherwise it's just comfort. You'll say, oh, this is a very nice setting. I feel very comfortable. It is like me. So that is one level of yes. And it too has authenticity. But there is something more, where it is showing you something that is there, that was there at the edge of your consciousness. You kind of knew it, kind of sensed it, but suddenly here it is, standing in front of you. So it makes the unconscious conscious. That is one of the crucial things that great art does. Wanting to put it in the purse, this is exactly what happens. Okay, that's exactly what happens with art. It's like, you immediately want to take that in and make it a part of you. And you close your eyes and you will see it. You have seen it like 10 years ago. You think of it and you see it in front of your mind's eye. So you're carrying it in your purse, because that's your head, that you're carrying it. You want to really keep it in your heart. And that's what you do. So great observations. So I'm telling you, this is such a great series, and we're just beginning to get started on this. Next up is going to be Mona, Nalini, welcome back, and then Marco. Mona.
Yeah, I really like what I'm hearing, but I wanted to sort of build on that to me, great art has to point, truth, but like just something universal, because cannot be just my truth. It's like your truth and everyone else's truth. It's universal values, and it's true that it has to have a story, it has to have a beginning, middle, and end, and all of that. But true great art takes you beyond that. Like you kind of realize it's not about the story. And then what it really is, you can't even put it into words, but it moves you. It leaves you gasping. And then it leaves you with more questions and answers. It doesn't tell you anything like that you should take for granted. It just leaves you wondering, like, wow, what is that? And then it does take you to the core of things, true art. And then most of the time you can't even say why. What is that? Like, you can't put your finger on it, but it points towards a true universal experience that belongs to all of us. That's what I believe.
Wonderful. I think it's absolutely true. I mean, this is, and what it does is that it makes that universal experience. I mean, it's basically, another way of putting it, it's like, trying to experience the Tao. You're trying to experience God. You're trying to experience nature as such. Now, these are difficult to grapple with. What art does is that it's like an intermediary. It has more of it than you yourself currently have. So you can kind of see that there is more going on here. There is a sense of richness in great art. It's kind of like, Leonardo used to say, he used to say, excellences upon excellences. So you pack everything. And so the result of it is that there is just so much going on there that, depending on your mind, like one of the common reactions to Leonardo's paintings that most people describe is that of a mystery. Okay, so what is this mystery? And it is very deliberate. And he in his notebooks, he says, okay, I will create mystery. And he says, be careful about my paintings, because if you look at it, it's a prison for attention. You're not going to be able to look away. Okay. But what is it about it? It's because he's trying to capture so much of it that depending on what your mind is doing with it, you see more things. If you come back just like that, you will see new things. You come back after a year, you have changed, it will show you new things that you have. So it is like much, much more richer manifestation of the universal principle. It is universal. And that's what it gives. That's what gives it the power that it has to speak not only to most people, many, many, many people, but also to speak to you in different ways at different times. And to, like a static piece, imagine that static piece is telling you more things. It's not changing. It is what it is. It's telling you more things. So thank you. Thank you, Mona. Nalini, welcome back. And would love to hear what you have to say.
Well, I didn't attend the past two. I have been pretty sick, so today I decided I was going to sit into it. But to me, it's when my heart stops, when I look at the piece of art. It's something which leaves such an impact that I cannot sleep maybe for the next 2 days thinking about it. And then when I go back to it, you see something else that you miss, like you said. You were talking about Statue of David, and I remember when I went to see that with my husband, and I could still visualize where we were standing, how we looked at it, and how people were around me. But for that moment, it didn't matter who was looking at it, who was standing there. It was the Statue of David and me. And today, when you talked about it, actually, my heart is racing just to think about it. That's what it is for me.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And in some ways, these great arts, these great pieces of art require something from you. It's like you have to be open to it. Like, you have to open up your heart and to let them say what they are saying. If you take the attitude of the tourists, you say, oh, I want to just make sure that I can tell other people that I've seen the Statue of David. That is different motivation. Or to just get something. These are like deep, wells of water. This is like living water, fount of living water. And you kind of have to drink it in. And it requires you because it is the real impact of it is a transformation. And that's what, you're describing it as heart stopping, because you're saying, I need to pay attention to this. Nothing else matters. What is this? And it's like you don't fully kind of get your mind around it, but you are just struck by awe. I mean, awe is the best way I can describe, if I have to name an emotion. Awe, because that's like the primary thing that is happening. And then you have all kinds of emotions, on that. So wonderful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Marco. Marco, go ahead.
Yeah, on the universal aspect of it, like I know with music, it's like it's sort of like a universal language. Like I was in a jam band for a while, and like anyone could and it was like in an apartment building where we practiced, and basically like the person who lived there, people from so the other apartments would like come in every once in a while, and like they would pick up an instrument and like play it and start jamming. It's like, and it seems that way, like, you know, anyone from anywhere in the world could sort of like, you know, there's like a bass line comes in, and like each person could add their own, add their own like piece or part in this, in this um um in this jam. And it's like, yeah, that's where I think it's like this universal language. It's like, you're communicating with each other without speaking, and it's um yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. This aspect of kind of participatory nature of music or of art itself is a huge thing. And that's something that I want to go into in quite a bit of detail, because most people, when they think of art, they always think of art as a consumer, and they are only looking at one directional impact of it. And when you actually look at it from the perspective of just this level of art happening in interaction, that is something else. And that's what happens in great plays, great actors interacting with each other. That's what happens, in Indian classical music. It's called jugalbandi. It's like two people or multiple people talking to each other. Each of them are capable of producing art at this level, but together that they produce something far more richer. Excellent point, Marco. All right, now let's go to the next point. Now this is going to be much harder of that of medium. Okay, so I don't know what to do with it. Let's go with Nalini first. Nalini, go ahead. Nalini, you need to unmute.
I'm so sorry.
Problem.
I was thinking of the painting Scream by Edward Munch, which I happened to see in Canada when they had an exhibit. And there was someone standing next to me, I still remember. And I was in awe with that painting. And the person who was standing next to me all of a sudden said, "What is it really in this painting that has drawn you to this, and you are looking at it so intentionally?" And I said, "I don't know. I am just in awe with the painter, Edward Munch, who did this. And what I am seeing is something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. And that's how I feel." But that person then said, "Explain it to me." And I said, "I don't know how to explain that feeling or that emotion. It's what I feel inside me. For you, probably it's totally different." And that's how I look at art, that for each person, it's a different emotion, it's a different feeling, it's a different impact. And nobody can replicate that when you're trying to explain it to someone. I don't know how to do it. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Nalini. I mean, one of the great things about people like Aristotle or Ayn Rand is that they're trying to get under this. They're trying to say, okay, how can you talk about it? It is true that it is primarily an experience, but then some people are able to speak of it a little bit more than others. And what people in the aesthetic field are trying to do is that they are trying to make it more and more explicated, so they can say what is going on. It doesn't change the fact that there is difference of individual response. It doesn't change the fact that most people will find it very hard to explain why. And explication of it is not needed in order to enjoy and have the impact of art. But it is possible because in some ways, even the artist also have to do some level. They may not necessarily have to put it in words, but they have to have a way of thinking about it with which they can actually create an art of that kind. So they need to have, for lack of better word, vocabulary. That vocabulary could be visual, it could be movement, it could be all kinds of things. It could be like seeing, okay, maybe something is wrong here and I need to adjust to it. But so there is a lot going on in artistic response because it is almost as complex as life itself. And in some ways, it is at the higher end of life because it is the conscious, it's conscious and subconscious consciousness trying to grapple with life and values and trying to do that in concrete form. So a lot is going on in art, both in kind of creation of art and in our response to it. All right, let's go next to, so I'm now trying to decide what to do with, okay, wait a minute, Mona, folks, feel free to make comments. There is no hurry. We just want to explore this topic. Go ahead, Mona.
Yeah, I'm not sure how my comment here will fit with the discussion, but I wanted to bring up an example of what I think is art, right? I'm talking about calligraphy, and I've been reading about it, like master calligraphers, how they talk about their work, where even just a brush, just one line, it doesn't have to tell a story. It doesn't have to mean anything. Just one line, it can transport you somewhere because it carries the vitality, the living force. The calligrapher, master calligrapher, breathes life into it somehow, and then one could see it. So I was wondering about that because it's very, very simple. It does not have to carry a message, or it does not have to be explicit into what exactly is it that you're hearing, but it can put you in that state where Shrikant, like you said, oh, like, wow, what I'm seeing is alive. So that's what I'm looking for, actually, when I look at art. Is it alive?
Absolutely. And different cultures have different things like this. The way in which calligraphy is developed in the East is at a level much, 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 much higher than any kind of a general purpose art in the West. That's, and correspondingly, India would have some things like that. And part of it is that, it's all expressions, it is all expressions. They're trying towards the same thing, but in so many different ways. So it's also showing us the richness of the human being and human expression. All right, so now we have to decide what to do. There are two other ideas, one of manner and one of medium. Both are actually very large ideas. And I don't know if we are prepared to discuss it. So I'm going to attempt both of them, to discuss both of them, and let's see what happens. Okay. So Aristotle makes a very big deal about the medium that is used, because that is going to shape the way in which you're going to do that. Now, let's take everything that we have seen in the discussion of object, hold that constant. Take the highest of everything everybody has said and say, okay, that is the object, okay, regardless of the medium that we are going to be talking in, okay? So holding that as constant of the greatest possible object of art. Now let's talk about the mediums, okay? Essentially, there are three mediums, and then there are combinations of these things. This is a very rough picture of the classification. In some ways, there are infinite number of arts which do kind of all kinds of combination, but just for simplicity, I'm just focusing on three. So literature How do you do this in words written down? Second is music. How do you do it in music? And how do you do in visual arts? This is painting or sculpture. Okay, let's talk about these three mediums. So the question now is about how do each of these mediums achieve the same goal? They're so different from each other. Music is basically you're using your ears, and it just goes to your ears. It hits your emotions directly. You have immediate emotional response to the music. Visual art, let's take painting, for example, or sculpture, painting. You take it all in one go. And then you can go into details of it, and it's static. Music is happening over time. This is happening statically. Literature, a book, let's take, maybe a short story or something like that. And you go in sequence. Now, I know like movies or plays include all of these things, but I'm deliberately taking them separately so we can try to understand how each of these things, or try to kind of grapple with each of these things separately, and then we can talk about combinations like plays or movies. So any thoughts about how these three things work? You can talk about one of them, you can compare two of them, you can compare all three of them. Any thoughts? Keep the object the same, of actually delivering everything that people have talked about. How do you do that in music? How does music work? So it's a really core question of how it happens in these three. How does literature do this? How does painting do this? And how does music do this? Go ahead and type an exclamation mark or raise your hand in Zoom if you'd like to comment. Okay, we'll start with Katie.
I'm just throwing a speculation out there, but I think with like a book, there's a strong development in the character, like so they might whereas something like a painting, it might be like a first impact. Like I feel like that would be less of a, other people might disagree with me, but I feel like I experienced it as one, as an experience rather than a development of an experience.
Thank you, Katie. So folks, feel free to compare all of them. How is literature? In some ways, you can also look at the history of these things. Music is much older. It's very old. So you can look at the time, you can look at, and it's not static. I think what Beethoven managed to do with music was something, he actually showed us some things that, music was not doing before. So there are steps like that. Same thing with literature. There are people who have same thing with visual arts. So any comments about how do these mediums do that? Maybe it's too nebulous a question, and maybe we can deal with it later on. If that is the case, that's the case. But if you have any comments, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. And even if you have just some tentative things to say, that's fine. Even if you want to talk only about one of them, that's fine. Because we're trying to learn, because there is really no way of learning until you put your thoughts on the table. And ideally for me, the best thing is to find out that you are all wrong, like that you only capture some of it, but only by saying out aloud what you actually thought, what you actually think now, you're able to compare that to all the other possible things and grow. So don't be shy. Just talk about what you know. Mona.
So I'm not gonna be shy then. I'm gonna say what I
Yes.
What I was thinking of is just, maybe I can give a metaphor. I was thinking of water, like how water seeps through the cracks, and it will reach wherever there's a crack. It will make its way through the deepest places. And I'm thinking about great art, whatever the medium is, that it reaches people in different ways. Some people have the cracks in different places, and then they respond more to words. Other people respond more to sound, or because that's how their brain functions. And then great art reaches them there because it's alive, like water. And then it just gets through the cracks to where it needs to go. That's how I see it.
Wonderful. I like the metaphor. It's basically, you know, our ability to take in information through different means is different. Like some people, you know, they can get music, and they will get music in a way where they can say, oh, this microtone is wrong. This is just a little off in terms of timing. And they can get it like that. They can say, oh, that doesn't sound right. You know, whereas another person, you know, can do the same thing with other arts. Maritza.
I'm thinking, I'm gonna piggyback a little bit off of Mona's example and think of conveyance. If I were tasked to consider, you know, the medium, you know, literature, music, even, um, and even the image, what all three of them do is seek to come. Well, they're not seeking. But they convey something all the same. You know, they're and what I'm thinking is that what moves something from the realm of art, or you know, somebody playing around, into the realm of a great work of art or a classic or something enduring. It's the increased ability to convey meaning. Even if the meaning that I get out of it differs from the meaning that you get out of it, it still has a high conveyance factor. And that, I think, is what makes it a, you know, great work of art. And I'm gonna use some examples that they might be a little controversial because different people see art differently. But to my thinking, it's a something I struggle with a lot in abstract art. I have a very hard time for it because I can't hear whatever it's trying to convey, or I don't understand and I can't grasp what it's trying to convey. So to me, it does not hit my radar as a great work of art. Like it just doesn't, because I don't see what's being conveyed, or I don't feel is probably more the appropriate, because in general we don't see it, we feel it. Like poetry. There's I think all poetry is delightful. I do. However, there is poetry that just speaks to you. What I'm hearing is not the same thing you're hearing, but I think that is almost immaterial. What's more important is the fact that it does convey something. Everyone on this Zoom, it's going to convey something, even if it's something different. Um, so you know, that's my thinking there. I wanted to go into music for just a minute because I think music is fascinating in that it's a literal emotion felt. Like you feel music literally, whereas you do feel literature or poetry or sculptures, but you know, there's vibration, there's sound added, it's an additional component. So you're feeling it on different levels. And so I think that you have a physical conveyance. So it's music might be interesting in that it might be easier to express what is being conveyed, or in that direction. So that's just, and music also is, there's more, it's more clear that there's an interaction between the artist, and the viewer. Whereas it's so easy to forget that there's those three components in poetry or in a Greek tragedy or in, you know, the David. But music is brilliant for looking at the concept of art because it you have to remember that there's those three. So those are my thoughts.
Excellent. So I want to build on a couple of things that you said. I think you use the word meaning. I think that's a really powerful word. And it's like, if art doesn't have meaning to you, then it is, I don't know. I mean, I don't, again, I don't think that just calling it something makes it so. So to me, it's like, okay, is this art or not? Like, there used to be like a David Letterman show, and they had a section, is this something or is it nothing? Or not about art, but about, they would do something and say, okay, is this something or is it nothing? And I think that's a very good, it's a very profound point. Okay. So I think the meaning, but the thing I want to build on more is the idea. I don't know if I can build on it, but it's a very big idea of that there is art, and art is the medium. It's right in the middle between the artist and the person experiencing art. Okay. So that's exactly, it's like 1, 2, and this is the thing in the middle, which is the art. Okay. Because the artist is not there, the other person is also not there, they go away, it remains there, but anybody can come there, and the artist can speak through that medium. So it's really, really fascinating. So I want to take this thread and build it on, through the series, that really we're really, it's like there is a tendency that we have of focusing on our responses, and our responses are responses to art. So it is telling you something about what is going on in you, but that is this receiver. You're talking about the receiver characteristics, and then this is not the same as the medium characteristics. There is something about the medium that makes the receiver feel a certain way, but you can look at the medium itself, which is what aesthetics is trying to do. And then there is an artist himself, and there is his full human being, amazing human being, very creative human being, is all kinds of characteristics. Only some of them are captured in the art. He's building some of what he has into that. So what exactly is it that he's building in? So excellent. Next up is Katie.
Right, we can't go back to Shakespeare and say, what did you mean by this? I think a painting is interesting because you just have an image in front of you and you have to create the words. Like, well, what is he trying to say? And a book's different because you have words and you're creating the images in your head. So you're going, she was angry, and your image you create is going to be different from one person to the next. So I think that's part of some of our discussions on like signifiers and signified might relate.
Absolutely. I mean, I think like literature is very different based on whatever little I know. Literature is very different from the other two arts, because in some ways it is more advanced. There was literature before, like in form of stories, but full like written novel, for example, the precision with which it can communicate things, the complexity of what is communicated, like the mere fact that it is explicit, I think makes it different, because music is not explicit. You have to give, as you're saying, Katie, you have to put in words for the painting, you have to put in the words for the music, but literature has words in it. The author is giving you words, and I do think that words are very important. They occupy a crucial role in human consciousness. And so I'm not fully thought through it, but there is a lot. It's going to be very interesting to see kind of looking at literature as a form and see how it is different from the other two. Of course, visual arts and music are also different from each other, but both of them are kind of closer to the implicit, subconscious, unconscious way of functioning when it comes to response. The response is completely, prior to conscious, explicit nature, and that medium itself is going to make things different. And the thing is that all of these arts do not exist separately. There are visuals that start accompanying different literature, different stories. There is music that is built on those things. Music uses the stories, the visual arts uses the stories as a base. The stories, so there is a back and forth that is going on. All right, so that's a very brief piece on medium for now, and that's something that we're going to build on quite a bit. So the last one is manner. Okay, now I don't know, I've just read Aristotle's Esthetics just once, Poetics just once, so I'm not completely confident about the issue of manner. But the simplest, at one level, I see it as being mapping as style, like different ways of doing things, taking the object as given, saying, okay, now I'm going to use this medium to achieve my object. And now this is kind of the stylistic details of how it is being done. And it can be done in multiple ways. You can see amazing variety of style in visual arts, music, as well as literature. So any thoughts about the manner? And again, now with respect to, let's come related back to the object. Keep the object grand, keep it at the highest possible as what we discussed, and say, how does the manner produce that effect? What kind of, what thoughts do you have about the relationship between the manner? There are multiple manners of achieving the same effect. Some of them may speak to you, some of them may not speak to you, but any thoughts about manner in general, or if you want to put it in Ayn Rand's terms, it's style. What is style? What is the role of style in artistic impact? What is the role of style in achieving the object? Or more I talk about this, I'm just talking out aloud here. It's basically how it is being done, which is different with different styles. Some do it in a very bold way, some will do it in a subtle way. And it will show in the difference in style, even when they're trying to do the same thing. So it's the question of how it is being done. So any thoughts on the topic of style or manner? Start with Maritza.
I'm going to take a shot in the dark here. I think if we're talking manner, what we're talking about is the way in which the artist presents or imitates the object. And so for that, I guess it's the how is going to shape how it's going to shape the impact and the resonance. And so I have no idea though how we would quantify that, because I would imagine that of the three components, it's perhaps the most subjective, but it doesn't have to be, because we have all these schools, there's all the schools of trying to teach this is the way in which you do it. And then, if I go to literature is an easy one to consider the how, because we have so many parameters. I'm going to fall back on something that's comfortable to me and use poetry for a moment to consider it, because there are so many very well-defined styles and structure patterns for poetry. And I've had various people ask, how does one take something so emotional or emotion ringing as a poem and structure it into a style or a specific pattern? And I think I don't, well, at first I want to say I don't have the answer, but it's a fascinating question because it begs one to be aware of the focus on presentation. So sometimes poetry is like, it's this massive, wide open spigot where everything just comes out, and it comes out in like a giant rush. But even within that massive flow, sometimes it comes out with a specific style or cadence of its own. So I think that maybe there's two aspects to this question of manner, and it's the idea of how does the artist juggle the natural style of the medium with their awareness of the emotional resonance to the audience. Or maybe not. Maybe the artist shouldn't care about that. Sorry, Shika. All I've done is give you more questions.
That's good. Questions are better than answers. Can you do me a favor? Can you read, DLG has been good enough to cut and paste. Can you go ahead and read that for us?
Absolutely, yes. There is still a third difference, the manner in which each of these objects may be imitated. For the medium being the same and the objects the same, the poet may imitate by narration, in which case he can either take another personality, as Homer does, or speak in his own person unchanged, or he may present all his characters as living and moving before us. Oh, I like that.
Thank you. So, and the thing is that Aristotle is actually beginning to discover this topic. And, when we are now sitting, with so much art in so many different forms below us or before us, we can actually see that it's a much larger issue than some things. He starts the discussion off. Look, these are the basic choices, but there are so many different choices of the how that are there. I want to focus on two things, and then we will go next to Nalini. But so one, I like, Maritza's approach of saying, okay, I know poetry, so I'm going to start to understand this complex idea through poetry. I think that's the right way of going about doing things, because instead of just making things up about things that you don't know, what happens is that if you know something, then you will have feedback mechanism. It says, no, it's not like that. Nothing like that. It's like this. Whereas you won't be able to see that. You won't be able to see the mistakes you're making as well if you're trying to talk about things that you don't know much about. So I like the fact of leveraging your own artistic experience of both kind of producing and consuming and trying to see these ideas in those contexts. And then you can slowly apply to other things. I think this topic of manner or style is very hard, because what you're trying to show is how does this happen? Now, it may seem very simple. It's like, okay, what is the problem with how? Because it's not what, because object is the what. Medium is through what, which just establishes a large pipe. Okay. What the style is doing is the how. Now, why is this how particularly difficult? Because of what the art is doing. The art is trying to do a felt transformation of consciousness. It's like, how do you need to be? How do you need to shape the message so that it produces that felt transformation? So it is actually like a technology. It's like a technology of psychology. It's a psycho-epistemological technology that we're talking about. And like you're trying to bring together those things. And you're not just trying to talk about it, but you are actually going to do that. And the other people are going to experience it. And if you have done it right, it is going to produce impact. If you've not done it right, it's not going to produce impact. So it's not going to be art. If you get the manner, if the manner doesn't mesh with human mind itself. So it is really based on understanding of human mind and how it takes in art and how it responds to art, and really fine points of the sequence that happens, the amount of repetition that is needed to nail something, at the same time not make it boring, not make it tiresome, yet not make it ephemeral so people will miss it. Okay, and all of that has to be done to have a manner that achieves we're talking only about the manner that achieves the objective. And there are multiple ways, because human mind is so complex. And there are multiple ways of doing that. And all great writers, they come in so many different styles. Great artists, they come in great, visual artists, musicians, they come in very different styles. But each of them manages to do it in their, so it has to be something that is natural to you so that you can actually produce it on the fly. You have to be able to produce it. So it has to match the way in which your mind works. And it has to match the way in which a mind of many, 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 many people works. It has to be something, there has to be something universal about the way in which the mind works that has to be captured in this manner. So that's why I think it's particularly hard. Next up is going to be Nalini. Nalini, go ahead.
I didn't read what DLJ had written. So I think I was thinking very much in that, the way he described it or copied and pasted. I was thinking of the imitation as a mannerism. And so it's like, if I like a novel, or if I like a piece of poetry or something else, and then I listen to the narration. Now, the narration done by two different people are going to be different altogether. And to me, it really, even though it shouldn't, but to me, that narration, that's the mannerism in that narration changes, I don't know, the experience to me. I have not read anything, so I don't really know. This is coming from me personally. That's how I felt, that the mannerism is one of those, just touching upon that. And because I have seen the heard, I should say, the audiobooks, and even, for example, Bhagavad Gita or Seneca, or when we listen to the different narrations, it does change for me. Not the meaning of what they wrote, but that experience of listening to it. I don't know if I'm making any sense or not, but that's part of it.
Thank you, Nalini. Absolutely. I mean, this is actually a very interesting point, because this happens in a whole set of arts, right? I mean, you have plays, and the playwright wrote the play, but the actors are going to actually perform the play. So whatever the art is has to flow through them. You're reading a poetry, and a poet wrote the poetry. If somebody is reading it to you, that person has to actually internalize that art, and what is being performed is a different art. It is resting, it is using the poetry as a poem as a base, but then you're speaking, and that is a different medium. And all the issues of manner, medium, object, again, reassert themselves as you are expressing it. To take an extreme example of it, there are so many people who try to convert books into movies, but only few of them succeed. Why is that? Because it has to be done by somebody who really actually appreciates the core of the book, the meaning of the book, understands it thoroughly, has the ability in movie making, artistic ability, that at least comes halfway in matching the artistic ability that went into writing the book, and then makes the choices to convert that, leaving things out, maybe even adding things in, to keep true to its own nature of the book, so that when you watch the movie, and if you have loved the book, you say, yes, they got the heart of the book. So excellent points. Thank you. Next up is going to be Mona, Marco, and DLG. Mona.
Yes, I wanna bring up another point because Shrikant, you said that art should, like the manner in which art is presented, has to have a resonance in the audience. But I'm thinking of artists that were not recognized during their times, yet they were visionaries. Like they were so far beyond the time that the many years had to pass before they were actually recognized as true artists. I'm thinking in particular of a woman, a Swedish painter. Her name is Hilma af Klint, that she was considered, now she's recognized as one of the first sort of abstract painters, right? She was she produced pretty much the first paintings that reproduced abstract art, and then she had it in her will, like she would not let her art be sold, and she had it in her will, let 20 years go past after my death before you let this thing out, because people are not ready. So and then that's just one example, but there's just so many, like Van Gogh. I mean, nobody could deny the art, right? But now, back then, different story.
Great point. The thing is that, great art actually has the universal capacity of speaking to you. But that depends whether somebody listens or not, depends on them. Okay, that doesn't change the fact that it does require something to actually listen. Just like an artist can't just do anything and call it art, I'm sorry to say that many people, their artistic experience is also similar, that they are actually not looking at art. They simply want to say, oh, I went and saw this, to other people. They really don't have, so it's like if they are used to certain things from childhood, they will react to some things and they will talk about it. But there is, for somebody to actually understand something which is significantly beyond their times, the listener also has to go beyond his time. So at least halfway. Doesn't need to go all the way, but at least halfway. They have to be able to step outside of what is common, what they're used to. If all they're looking for is a comfort, it is the question of felt transformation. Okay, felt transformation is not an easy experience. You know, it is saying that I want to see something new about myself. If you say, look, I'm good, okay, as I am, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to see anything else. Like, I think in Italian, I don't know this, but my friend Sherry, when she went to Italy, she said, I kept on hearing this thing. I think it's like, no voglio sapere. I don't want to see it. Okay. Okay. It's basically saying, you know, I don't want to hear it. Basically, I don't want to hear this. So it's when, you know, people are doing rumors, but that is like many people's attitude towards it. So just like, you know, great art takes something to produce, it does take something to even consume, because you kind of have to go halfway over there. But it doesn't change the fact that great art will speaks to other people. And only so it's a very, very particular thing. So it doesn't matter. And it is absolutely true that most people are not you know, focused on actually trying to go beyond, because they are, it requires that spiritual ambitiousness on the part of the consumer of saying, I want to learn about myself and the world. And if somebody is going to show me something that is beyond, it is towards the truth and beyond what I know, I want that. Most people don't want that. So in that case, their response is going to be different. But thank you, Mona. Next up is going to be Marco. Marco, go ahead.
As far as like style goes, I was just thinking, like, if you have like maybe like a male author who's maybe a bit more like rough around the edges, and he and like, you know, he's in his language, he's a very blunt, and you know, you can sort of, like, I was just thinking of like Henry Miller. He's very like in your face, and like you know, he doesn't have like a filter, you know, he just, and then, you know, if you have like maybe a female author who's, you know, there's more like a sort of like um you know, like a finesse, and it has a more of like emotional qualities, and like, you know, it's a bit more like sensitive, and yeah, you can sort of like feel that, you know, you can sort of feel that difference when you're reading the book.
Excellent point. Excellent point, Marco. What I would say is that really the quality of authenticity is crucial. Like, you know, great authors can have a very, very different styles from each other. But if they are remaining true to their own self, that authentic actually breaks through. Even when the listener's style is very different, they can feel that, oh, this is authentic. It's very different than how I would write or what I'm used to, but it has authenticity to them. So there is something with this kind of good manner in order to produce great art. There is so much variation that is possible. But the thing that is common is that authenticity. It's like, you know, you would find that both Miller or let's say one of the Bronte sisters, you know, they will have their very different styles, but each of them is authentic, and each of them kind of speaks fully in their own way. They speak in a different way, but they get the same things said. They will just do it differently, but both will kind of land in terms of, you know, they will produce the aesthetic effect. Thank you. Next up is DLJ, followed by Katie. DLJ.
Yeah, so I'm looking at Aristotle's words there, and what he's essentially saying is that the author or artist has a choice. is making a choice. So for whatever reason that might be commercial reasons because they want it to be financially successful, or it could be something more authentic or earnest. Doesn't really matter, because in whichever reason they're doing it for, what the manner is about is establishing a connection. So it's establishing a connection, implying therefore there's an audience with whom they want to establish a connection. So is that actually correct? Is an interesting question. Well, I write, and I write largely for cathartic reasons. In other words, I don't care whether there's an audience or not. Or, it has to be said, when we're in Maritza's group and we're forced to write for the wider group, that's different. That's not cathartic reasons. But when I'm doing it for myself, it's largely for that. So no audience, unless I think of it in this way, which maybe I'm the audience. So maybe it's about establishing a connection with myself. So establishing a connection, I think, is what the manner is about. So it's the choice of how I'm going to get that message across. You know, what style am I going to use in order to do that, right? So establishing a connection. There you go.
Excellent point. You know, absolutely excellent point, because it actually captures a lot of things. Because what he's done, what Aristotle is saying, okay, you can do it this way, you can do it this way, you can do it this way, but each is about establishing the connection. And either you do it or you don't do it. And there are multiple ways of doing that. So great point. Thank you. Next up is going to be Katie.
I was thinking of something that I've been mulling in the back of my head. What Maritza and I were talking about at the beginning of it, we're talking about social realism. And I think I'm still wanting to connect social realism to felt experience. Because I thought about it. And I was like, at a certain time, it might be taboo to show things realistically. So the boldness might be the boldness that you're saying that it's what it is, rather than the boldness of like making something close to perfect or awe-inspiring. Sometimes the boldness just might be like, it's kind of situational to the time period that you're in. You know what I mean? Like social realism with the pitchfork. Because I feel resonance when I see that. When I see like them holding a pitchfork. Two farmers, and it's very just simple, Iowa cornfield. But I feel a resonance when I see that. Maybe just because it's bold and it's in its realisticness. I'm not sure how to describe it.
Wonderful, thank you, Katie. All right, so now we're coming to about 10 minutes to go. So I think this is working very well. We're taking kind of concepts from Aristotle and we are discussing it. The next concepts that I would like to do is the concepts of plot. He has really, really amazing things to say about plot and the relationship of plot to the other elements. I don't know. Let's try. I'm going to just try this. The seed of the discussion here. So each of us can think about it. Each of us can go read Aristotle on this. So I'm going to use Ayn Rand's terms because those I'm more familiar with, and they also apply to much more widely to the kind of art that is prevalent today. So I'm going to use those 4 terms: plot, characterization, theme, and style. Okay. So theme is all about what is being said by the piece of art. What's the meaning of it? The style is how it is being said. Okay. So now we've got characterization and plot. Okay. Now, plot. What Aristotle is saying is that really it is all about plot. Everything else is integrated by the plot. Okay. Characterization is the detail of, so characters fit into the plot. They live inside of a plot. So this plot is the the general implementation of what the author is trying to do. So those are the four concepts. And I want to just focus on the plot and just get your initial thoughts about plot. Please realize that we're just doing this off the cuff here, just to get us started to discuss Aristotle. And I strongly recommend reading Aristotle's concept of plot, because on that, I think he's much above Ayn Rand on what he's saying about plot. He's giving a central role to the plot. It's like the spine of a being. You know, you're trying to grow something in art along a certain line. So so at this point I will get kind of initial comments on this. We'll keep it fairly short, and then we will go ahead and discuss it in detail next time. Mona, go ahead.
Very short. I have a metaphor again.
No, you guys can take as long as you want. I just don't, I'll just make sure that the discussion doesn't go for an hour.
Okay.
So please,
Okay.
please feel free to talk.
Okay. I wanted to bring a metaphor from Buckminster Fuller. I want to talk about synergy, because the way I see the characters are like, say, the moving objects in the universe, but then the plot is what connects them together, what makes them stick. And it's the extra, it's more than the sum of the parts. So it's not enough just to have the characters like the stars in a constellation. You need to know that they are a constellation and they travel together, and that's the synergy. So that's all I had to say.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you. And what you're doing is that a great author is actually choosing this almost like a cast of characters. It's like, it's not just kind of, oh, I like this, I like this, I like this. It is like these characters together will bring out each other's nature and will show you the kind of meaning of what I'm trying to say using that. So absolutely. All right. Does anybody else have anything to say about plot? Or you can plot to say it next time, which is also an option. All right. So Maritza, this is the first time you were listening to this, participating in this series. And thank you so much for filling in. What do you think so far of this series?
I like the way that you did it. I like the querying, as it were, for people's thoughts and people's ideas. I hadn't envisioned it being so very subjective minded, which is kind of funny. I thought we were doing more of an objective dialogue, but I find that I really enjoyed the subjective instead, because it kind of makes sense since art is so very subjective. It's more approachable. Like I said, that I'm really, really glad I didn't scare them off, because I really was being far more objectively minded when we started. So they probably all breathed a sigh of relief when you joined. But I like the approach. I think that I don't know, it feels like it's the idea of you're inviting us to focus on how we individually view it. And then in hearing all the different, I view it this way, we can get a glimpse of maybe what the universal answer might perhaps look like.
Thank you, Maritza. I thought you did a fantastic job, but we can disagree on that. That's all right. What I'm trying to do here is, this is a difficult topic to talk about, and most people do not talk about it. So I'm trying to actually talk about it, because I think we understand it more. I mean, it's really special what we have here, that we can actually do this. We're getting actually very different perspectives. There are people with very different strengths, very different kind of modes of art that they appreciate, and they're talking about those things. And I'm continuously picking up for myself. I'm just picking up more and more things. And what it is doing is it is also unfolding different subjects, different, not just perspectives, but saying, oh, this entire area I had not looked at. Like you talked about the three things, or DLG talked about the connection. That okay, what is happening with the connection? Or Mona talked about authenticity. So it's like these perspectives, and these concepts actually allow you to really understand what is going on with art. And then just I really like art. I really love art. So for me, it's like going in and seeing your own artistic experience and trying to think about it. So I think it's far more richer than going just directly through Aristotle. So I'm using Aristotle as a jumping off point. I'm taking, and the way I'm doing it is I'm picking and choosing key concepts of Aristotle in his Poetics. So if you have any suggestions about key concepts, it may not be right. We are kind of at the beginning of the Poetics here, but it can be anywhere. You can go ahead and you can put it in the chat right now, or you can just, send me a Meetup message of saying, you know what, we should do these. I think that these are, so next time I'll ask you the question, which do you think, if you wanted to kind of put down not more than 10 concepts of Aristotle's Poetics, which you think you've learned most from, which you think are key concepts of Aristotle. Just go ahead and put that out. Not right. Let's not do it right now. Let's do it next time. And I strongly recommend reading him, because you get so much more from these discussions by doing that. All right, folks. So thank you so much. Tomorrow we are actually doing more concrete things. We are looking at Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus. Don't know how to pronounce his name. DLJ, do you know how to pronounce his name?
I don't know how he pronounced his name, but that's what you did.
How did he do that?
That's how I pronounce it. Whether he did pronounce it like that, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know the gentleman. You're older than me, so maybe.
Yeah, we were buddies. Yeah.
Next, so we're going to, and this is the series that Phil is doing. We're going to do 3 Greek plays. I think it's going to be Oedipus Rex by Sophocles, and then Medea by Euripides. So this is 3 series. And this is, we have moved to Fridays. Every other Friday is going to be, like, I think second and fourth Friday is going to be plays. What we found is that many people were finding it difficult to do the Sunday schedule. So I've just moved it into this. So for Fridays, we have got, on first Friday, we have got the Divine Feminine. That's actually going to turn into the Power of Myth. We're going to have Brian lead, Brian, Penny, and Evanique. But Brian is leading the charge on the Power of Myth, and Penny and Evanique would add things to that. So he's going to go through this entire book, probably chapter by chapter. I don't know the exact plan, but that's starting on that's going to be the first Friday of October. So that's first Friday. Second and fourth Fridays are going to be the great plays. After we're done with the Greeks, we're going to go to Shakespeare, then we're going to go to Ibsen, etc. And then we're going to do 3 plays from 20th century. So that'll be like 12 plays, but I'm announcing them 3 at a time. I want kind of the common period as the integrating mechanism that Phil and I have chosen. So that's on second and fourth Friday. On third Fridays, we have Design Your Life. So that's what is going to come up. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. Good night. And thanks again, Maritza. Bye.